Beautiful.
It's Vista Grande.
First of all, welcome here. It's
Thank you.
such an honor to hang with you.
And it's an honor to be here.
We talked a minute as you were getting set up that there's a majestic style to some of the sections of this. What is that? What creates that?
Well, I think it's a love of classical composition and rock and roll and everything. Classical rock and roll, some bluegrass, some swing, rockabilly.
But it sounds like music of the heartland or something.
I like that. I like that.
You know, that has a kind of a hymn-based of intervals used and things like that, and the type of harmony used.
The first music I knew was from a church. You know, my dad was a preacher, and we didn't listen to pop music in our house. So, you know, I was
You'd sing hymns in church and things like that, right?
I had the transistor radio that I hid under the pillow, and that's how I heard, you know, a lot of the pop music.
Yeah.
I'm just such a big fan of Bach too, because, you know, a lot of his gig was writing stuff like that.
You were playing something when you were warming up also that has that classical influence in it.
That piece that I was doing was just part of Night Meets Light, and it's an example of trying to make a chord but arpeggiating it so that you can try to imply more than one. And during the song, there's parts like. But you know, trying to keep a top melody going while you have things happening.
Well, the inner lines are going, a bass line's going,
and there's compromises as a guitar.
Yeah, but I love all this intervals, the dissonant intervals with the flat nines and things, and then you use your thumb and to grab those bass notes. I mean, the guitar is the hardest instrument to do counterpoint on.
I usually do more counterpoint with the low end or with the bass. It's hard. It's easy to do on the classical.
Could we plug in that and have you do a little bit of that?
Yeah. Okay. So it starts out. I guess I'm more comfortable putting more movement on the low end because I heard some Walter Carlos, now Wendy Carlos, stuff where maybe it was Monteverdi or something, where the bass was just thundering along, and I thought this was heavy metal back then. This was it, and Bach was such a natural for that. Anything he wrote, practically, you could speed up and put double bass drums on, and it's a metal tune to me.
I love that. The harmony there that's happening, there's so much harmony because of the bass motion too.
Yeah, and sometimes you have to break the rules, or at least I do anyway. That's not a normal. And it happens on the strung part of the beat.
Yeah.
But if you keep it, look at it from a distance, it's a. Then all the chromatic notes don't seem so chromatic.
Right.
It just seems like it just kind of works.
That they're passing notes.
Yeah, passing notes, exactly. Yeah. But sometimes I'd end up with passing notes that aren't diatonic on the strung part of the beat, but they quickly resolve.
Yeah.
And they're part of a fluid thing.
That's the thing that Bach did that he would have these dissonances that move past, and you'd realize they happened, but the way that he would resolve them was so far ahead of its time.
Yes, I agree. And when you played one of his like a cello or viola or a violin solo part, that to me, I mean, I wasn't there, but to me, he wrote that for somebody for a lesson. You know, here, try this, learn this by Tuesday. But those oftentimes have those suspensions in them that resolve, that if you learn it slow, you say, oh, this doesn't sound like the right note. But you put it into context and play it at the right tempo, and you see, oh, the chord, it's changing, here's the suspension, it's resolving, then we go to this.
Now, do you think about harmony in like a diatonic way, or do you think of this linearly, like how the lines fit together to create the harmony?
Sometimes I work off a melody, and you know, in the old days, they would write, the shorthand would be figured bass.
Yeah.
And so I guess I sort of think that way. And a lot of times the middle voices are on guitar, whatever you can do.
Right.
Because you don't have the option of keeping the middle voices consistent. You're dependent on open strings and fingering and stuff like that. So I'm more thinking figured bass, melody and bass.
When did you learn this stuff?
You learn by doing. You're writing pieces for classical guitar, for, you know, on piano, for assignments. I did go to music school and everything, so there was assignments all the time, and a lot of it would be harmonize these Latin words, you know. And to me, that was a license to write instrumentally. You know, to me, I didn't care. You know, I didn't know I didn't study Latin, so. I got a lot of experience doing that. And you develop a sort of a pattern where you know when you've got something good and you keep it, and hopefully you never settle for anything below that.
So where do the influences with all the chicken picking and things like that, the bluegrass influences, where did you learn all that stuff, or where did you come up with all that stuff?
Well, a lot of it was multi-influence. But I'd say, you know, when I heard Albert Lee play, he played a different style, not picking every note, and he had a more fluid legato style. But he's so incredibly good, and we ended up doing a lot of gigs together because of Sterling Ball and the band we had. That was wonderful, really good experience for me. Mm-hmm. One time we did 19 shows at the Music Messe in Germany, you know, like several a day, and just stand next to Albert Lee, you know, playing these tunes, and he's just nailing it every time. Every time's different, and it's great to be around musicians like that, and that's the biggest part about being in a music school is seeing. These guys are in the same class, but why is this guy excelling so much? What is his mindset?
Now, I asked you just before we started, when you were at the University of Miami, if Jocko and Pat Metheny were there at the same time, and they were. I mean, I'd heard that you guys were all there at the same time, and you saw Jocko play.
He would bring ideas for what became the Dregs. It was called the Rock Ensemble No. 2. It was my small group, and they treated it as a class, mm-hmm. where I got to give people grades, and so whatever they paid me, it would reflect the grade. No, it was just the guys in my band. So one of the things that I got to do was jam with him on his turf. Mm-hmm. He lived up in Lauderdale by the sea, literally by the sea,
okay.
Like a tiny little apartment, but. So I drove up there. My car was just a mess, just barely made it. The wheel later fell off, I think a few days after that, the front wheel. But we got there. I brought my guitar. I said, all right, I'm here to jam. He says, well, first we got to jog. I mean, he was just energy all the time. So
okay.
all right, let's go jog. And I was not a jogger, but you know, I was a young kid, so I could just deal with that. And so we jogged up and down the beach. And then the beach, it's a lot harder to jog.
It is.
I didn't know this stuff. I'd never jogged on the beach. So
okay.
We come back, I'm like, winning. All right, cool. Let's spend some time playing. I don't know, man. I'm a little kid. I'm like, we got to go body surfing.
What?
So we go back out, and we're body surfing, and he just just hauling your body out each back and forth is a lot of work.
Right.
Jocko was maybe just calmed down enough to where he could play and jam. So we did end up playing, but it was like dousing something with gasoline, and you take a little spark from the lighter. Well, Jocko, just give me a tempo. Let's start. And he was off. It was like a freight train going downhill. You couldn't stop him.
And he would play around town all the time then.
Yeah,
right?
I'd see him play set after set after set, playing just a super fast two finger stuff that he would do, and relentless. Without, it's like, I mean, you'd lose some skin on somewhere on your body from playing that many notes.
So having people like that in the scene down in Miami, that must have been just an incredible time to develop.
Oh yeah, talk about a complex. You come from a small town like I did, and all right, hey, here's the new guys in the class. Pat, nice to meet you. What'd you say, Matheny? Oh, okay. Well, let's play. And he could hear anything I played, and he could respond to it. He had the ears, and when it came to the jazz stuff, which I was like not a jazz guy, so that was kind of like his other jamming that he did with the people doing the jazz stuff. But when we do free-form jamming, it was so cool because he listened and respond and play, add to things and pick up on things. And we both, had been working on ear training and stuff. And so we were really sort of hyped up to do that. It was a great experience. And to see that level of musicianship. And at the time, I think they were trying to make him a student, because he had just come there. But I think they realized, well, hey, this guy needs to be teaching lessons, not, what are you going to show him? Yeah, no, Pat, that's wrong. No, and so he taught lessons.
I can't even imagine, right, all you guys there at the same time.
And there was more. Hiram Bullock,
right?
he was in our band for a while. He was a great guitar player, but Andy hadn't moved down yet, the bass player.
Yep.
And so Hiram, he was playing some gigs with us on bass.
Wow.
And he was just, and Hiram's like, whatever, man. And he could just do it. Uh-huh. So he was like another one. What? And Peter Harris, later played with Hornsby. Mm-hmm. Peter Harris was there, just wonderful guy. I got such great experience. Pat Metheny recommended me for the gig at the Coconut Grove Playhouse to be in the pit when he took off to go tour with Gary Burton. So that was another cool thing, is that I got to inherit his gig and played back up to all these live musicals. And that is a great experience too, seeing the people up there, talking to them backstage, seeing the trials and tribulations of the whole thing from the backstage to the looking at it from the front. And that's really good experience for everybody. I think everybody needs to know the humanity of what's involved when you do a show. The guys behind the scenes are working their butts off. And a lot of times the people in the spotlights are the only ones that get any credit.
And were you reading on that gig? That was a reading gig, right?
It was a reading gig, but now I was in Metheny's reading ensemble, but I think he was like an order of magnitude ahead. So I could sight read, but some of the stuff was just, a piano player wrote it and put, which clef is guitar on? Oh, the same, okay. and just put it on there. And one of them was, I think, for Pearlie, they said, can you play banjo? Yeah. So I went out and bought a banjo and tuned it like a guitar. So, and just, and of course, the parts are in E flat and stuff. You know? So it wouldn't have made any difference if I really played banjo. I would have had to read and learn the parts anyway. A steel drum player that worked with Jocko, Otello, Otella had a band, and it was him and Cedric from Trinidad, and then Carlos Lundy Curtis Lundy and Carlos in rhythm section. They're from my year of the music school, and they were so great to me. They understood that. I was coming from a different place and, not really a rhythm, blues, or jazz background, but they let me just find my space and fit in with them, and they taught me a lot. That was wonderful, the gigs we did.
So it sounds like people were really open-minded about styles
Yes.
back then.
A year before I went to school, I remember seeing Hendrix, Janis Joplin, Dave Brubeck, jazz, and then Goose Creek Symphony, jug band. Janis Joplin was doing blues, and Hendrix
All together.
Yeah, the idea was, it was good to have variety. We've always thought the same way with when we had opening bands. If possible, can we get something most different from us?
But it was more common back then, when I was growing up, to have fusion bands opening for rock bands or things like that. Like they'd have pairings that you would never see today.
Yeah, one of the weirdest pairings I remember was Hendrix opening for the Monkees.
What was Hendrix like to see live?
I saw him twice, and one was really good. The other one, not as good to me.
Okay.
Because he was, experimenting more with that band of gypsies, getting away from his psychedelic, stuff that, what really brought me in as a kid. If I was to listen to it today, I think I would say they were both great. But as a kid, I was, I like cartoons and wild guitar playing.
What are groups that you were really influenced by?
Oh man, this is a long one. I hate lists because I leave things out. But starting with the Beatles, Rolling Stones, Kinks, Yardbirds, all the obvious stuff. Mitch Ryder and the Detroit Wheels. That was a little bit more R&B, but then, once you got to Hendrix, Cream, and Jeff Beck Group, that was really the time where the British guitarists, and I remember doing a cover of Hush, like in the John Lord and Ritchie Blackmore style. With my brother, we used to jam every day after school. My brother was a drummer. I remember seeing Emerson, Lake and Palmer and going, "Oh my God, this is so cool!" And of course, yes, and it was endless. There was almost nothing that I didn't love. You can't name me a great guitarist that didn't make some kind of impression on me.
Did you do a lot of transcribing of solos, or did you really work on your own style always?
Well, we had a record player with a heavy needle head, and it wasn't balanced. It was before it was a version below where they had balanced ones.
Yep.
My dad had made this Heathkit amp. So we had an amp and then into a speaker down in the basement. So I would go down there and try to learn stuff. But you could only do it so many times before you wrecked the record.
Yeah.
So, and you could slow it down, but it was in the wrong key. Because, 45 RPM to 33 didn't work out. And we didn't have the 16 to play LPs at the half speed.
Yeah.
So transcribing was very difficult. And I was a kid.
Yeah.
A pre-teen. So I kind of imitated him, rather than learn them note for note. Right now, if I was to go do a tribute of somebody, I would probably improvise around what it sort of sounded like I did with Purple. The secret is not getting too close to the stage where the tomatoes could reach you.
Okay, so how did you develop your right hand, all the alternate picking stuff?
When I first heard Jimmy Page play, was it Communication Breakdown? Dun, 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 where he had some busy solos.
Yeah.
One of my friends that had a magazine said, "Look, he practices 9 hours a day, and he picks every note." So, wow, picking every note, okay. And I'd been doing the yodel,
Yep.
kind of things. And so I said, I've got to try that. So I switched then. I think it was 15. And I lost a lot of the soul and fluidity of my playing, but I kept at it and kept at it and kept at it and kept at it. And finally, I started to get a breakthrough where one day I could feel like, oh wow, I can think I can play this, this really difficult thing and feel it rather than struggling. Once I saw John McLaughlin with Mahavishnu Orchestra doing Intermounting Flame and see them live at the University Music School.
Yeah.
It was raining when they set up, so they moved in the cafeteria. And I happened to be at the right place at the right time getting my peanut butter sandwich from the cafeteria. And they said, they're going to be playing here in an hour and a half. So I just sat there right in front of that Marshall stack. So I saw it. That made a big impression. But he was picking everything.
Oh, yeah.
And then later on, when I got to work with John McLaughlin, Paco de Lucia, and Al Di Meola,
Yep.
that brought up a whole nother notch of awareness, because Al's super rhythmic, incredible playing. Paco's amazing flamenco playing with fingers. And of course, everything John did, I was already a fan. That elevated my awareness. I never reached the John Petrucci level of picking, but I had a different style and different approach, and one more of control, for doing a lot of arpeggiated things.
Yeah. Well, we were talking about the song Too Many Notes, and I was playing, and I'm going to just play it right now, about the especially the muted arpeggios that you're doing in there, muted string picking. But let me just play the beginning of the song here. Okay, so I've watched videos of you play back then. I want to talk about how your technique was then and how you've had to change it.
Well, originally, the idea, and the reason I got so much flexing of the two axes of movement, not just this, but this and this, was I was making a bridge between my fifth finger and palm of the hand, and pick the string that I would pick would be in this arch opening. So I'd be picking only that string, move it over here, and block these strings, these strings, but only pick that.
Yeah.
So when I was doing Too Many Notes, it was like, I would move it along so that I was muting the strings.
Yeah,
hitting
muting
them
them with your pinky.
and palm.
And your palm.
That made this kind of movement, and I practiced about 10,000 notes a day for decades.
Yeah.
And my genetic history of arthritis led me to where these bones don't have the cartilage anymore, and then they get worn away, so they're, quote, diseased and very painful. Mm-hmm. But rather than roll over and die, I'm like, no, I still want to play, man. There's a way to do it.
Okay.
And so what can I do? For the muting, I'm still working on some solutions, but up here, I made a device so that when I'm playing up high, say up here, see how the strings are going? I just have a mute. And it's muting it for me, and I can quickly, turn it on or off.
Steve, is that your invention there?
It's obviously been done before, but I invented a different way of making the structure and making it, I think, more immediate. And
yes, where you can take it on and off.
Yeah.
It's like a kind of like a hip shot tuner, but for a muting or whatever.
Yeah. The other thing is I changed my technique. Some pieces I still have to do where in order to have the control, I still have to. Where I have to move my hand like the old way. And it hurts. I can do it.
But the muted picking part, you're doing finger picking now, right?
If I was to play Too Many Notes, I would have to.
You have to do finger picking, right?
But it doesn't sound the same to me. I would have to work up to that. That's one of the goals is to see if I can perfect that my fourth technique.
Yeah.
But my other two are taking the same 2 fingers and a thumb.
Yep.
But with a stiff arm. It's going where. I'm not using my wrist. And the third technique is holding the pick with the side of my finger.
Yeah.
And that's what I did. So I have to keep switching those because this way hurts after a while.
Yeah.
This way hurts after a while, and this just hurts. So I'm very busy, kind of switching things around and being mindful of what's necessary for each tune.
But you've always held your pick, though, or you used to hold your pick with the 3 fingers, correct?
2 fingers and a thumb.
Or 2 fingers and a thumb.
Yeah.
But do you think that because of that, where the pick was, that it changes kind of the center of gravity as opposed to holding it with just 1 finger and a pick? When you move it more closer to the middle of your hand, that it's actually easier to rotate and play faster like that?
For string skipping.
String skipping.
That was the thing. And that was my thing.
Yeah.
I did a lot of string skipping.
Yes.
And still try to. But it's harder because you don't get the same arc
Yeah.
with the pick as if you rotate the wrist.
Yeah.
It's weird that it changes choices. You know, I hate having less choices, but I am a writer, and I happen to play guitar. Yeah, I have to look at it that way, you know.
With the Dregs, would you write charts out for
I
things?
did.
You did, right?
As little as possible, because the guys would bring the charts to these gigs and lose them, and then I have to do it again.
But you guys would have charts, though, right?
For rehearsal.
Yeah.
The idea, we had a lot of different keyboard players. Frank Joseph was our first keyboard player, but since the keyboard players could always get gigs, right? So they were not there for long once they realized, hey, our big paying gig pays $11 each, you know. So they were more apt to be the ones with the written. I would do chord symbols and lead lines with them. Unless they were going to be in the band, then we go everything, then down to exact voicings. But I tried to later get the guys to learn the parts. Like if we had a difficult part for rehearsal the next day, I would bring in cassette tapes. Say, here's the part for tomorrow, and then we'll work on something today, and then bring that part in, and that way. Unless they wrote it down, there wouldn't be a sheet of paper that they could lose. They had to learn it.
Right.
Another thing I learned being a band leader is that musicians underestimate their ability. Even really good musicians. They would often say, let me work on that at home. I say, how about this? Give me 5 minutes. Just 5 minutes of your undivided attention. And let's just see where we are. And I would show them that 16-bar difficult part in 5 minutes by breaking it down, and they would be able to play it. Maybe not at the exact tempo, but they would have it and have it down. Almost universally, 5 minutes of attention can bring anybody doing anything to a higher level of understanding. So why is it so hard for us to give 5 minutes?
Well, obviously it wasn't hard for you to give 5 minutes. Rod was a great reader on drums, too.
Rod was, a self-starter. He was a musician.
Yeah.
I knew him as a piano player that improvised really well in an improv class. And Hiram, I was Hiram Bullock that said, I played with that guy that's in the improv class. He's a really good drummer. I said, no kidding. We needed a keyboard player, but we also needed a drummer. At the time, Frank was there, so we had a keyboard player. So I said, can you play drums, man? He said, yeah, I'll bring him. So Rod doesn't need any help figuring out what to play.
Right.
And of course, no matter what, I stick my nose in and say, yeah, Rod, could you do those as accents with me, and then this part do with Andy, and he totally gets it, He's just a natural.
when you started having problems with your wrist, right? That was only in the last 10 years or so,
Yeah.
right? Was it a gradual thing, or you just start having a shooting pain in your wrist?
Oh, I had shooting pains for a long time, but I always thought it was ligaments
Okay.
and tendons
Yeah.
that I had strained earlier. And it had been those injuries too. You know, I've got it all. The tendonitis, whatever, you name it, I've got it. Whatever you can get from playing a half a century
Right.
relentlessly. I thought that I was going to be able to, there was soft tissue stuff that would be fixable. The sports doctor was looking and said, he was laughing at me. I said, why do you have so much arthritis? You're too young for this. I said, I don't like the fact that you're laughing and that I have too much arthritis. And he said, yeah, you got a problem. And then I went up to Harvard Medical and said, can you guys do something and give me some cartilage or something? They said, no, it'll be like a tumor if we do. And, well, we can fuse your bones.
No, we don't want that.
I said, well, I can play that way, I guess. And that's what I chose to do, is fuse the bones of my wrist for most of the strenuous stuff.
In the opening piece that you played, you do the artificial harmonics.
Yeah.
Now, does putting your hand that way, that doesn't really affect it that much, does it?
Well, it hurts a little bit, but
Okay.
It's a combination of a harmonic and natural note.
Yeah. Beautiful.
Lenny Bro was the absolute
The
master.
master of it, yes.
And he was a nice guy. I was one of those people that went up to him and, you know, tugging at his cape to say, hey, would you mind showing? And he would spend the time to talk to me at a NAMM show or something. And I idolize people that have done great things, that treat people that they don't know with respect. It shows to me that they're real artists. And they're not seeing themselves as above anything. Because to be a real artist, you have to be down in the dirt, and, you know, the blues guys would say you have to be living the blues and to play the blues or whatever. But music is a reflection of our lives. And you have to have a life. You have to have a real life to play real music, I think.
You have a very complex rig right now. But what was your rig back, like historically? What did you start out playing?
Okay, it was guitar into, I had a Princeton amp, and I grew that when I got a Vox amp.
Okay.
And I didn't have a fuzz pedal, so I put the Princeton amp into the Vox.
Okay.
Over time, blew it up.
To actually distort it, using it
Yeah.
as the as like a preamp.
Then when I got the Super Beatle, even the transistor one, I interconnected all the channels, played through all of them at once, and got a little bit of a cool sound there.
Okay.
It had the mid-range boost, where you could hit a button and suddenly, you know, I had a Strat at the time. Your Strat sounds like a humbucker. I said, oh yes, that's what I've been missing, that humbucker sound. So when my Telly Frankenstein came to be, that was number one.
Right.
I want that. Fender just come out with a humbucking pickup. I said, I want that. That's wood. I have a hammer. My dad has chisels. I'm going to make it. And so that's what, you know, it's very primitive, but that's how I made my guitar. And this is exactly, you know, the same setup.
You have a lot of varied lead tones, but some of your melodies that you play will be that really soaring, anthemic sound. You just were looking for that,
Yes.
right?
And that's why this guitar, this is my Steve Morse signature, but it has only 22 frets, because that's where this pickup needs to be to get that sound.
It has to be where the harmonic is, right?
Yeah, but where that 2-octave point, it
Yes.
has to be underneath that.
Right.
And you can't have a 24 fret neck and do that.
Right.
Everything's a compromise. And as you look, you know, pickup truck's great for this, small sedan's better for this.
Right.
So you decide what's more important, and the sound was more important than that. That's why when I hit that E, I bent from a C sharp.
Right.
Partly so I could stay in the same position and not have to shift and, you know, risk losing it.
Do you think that the having the pickup, having the magnetic field around where the harmonic is at the 24th fret, that influences the way that the string moves as well?
There's no way that it cannot influence it. Yeah, you're right. I mean, I've got a lot of magnets here. That's why my single coils are pulled really far away.
Yeah.
And one of the advantages of that is it gives me a great way to reduce the volume. If I've got a ton of front end distortion, it's just straight. But I could go to the single coil and turn it down. It gives me a lot more variety. When you're hitting an amp hard, you get the clipping. The sound waves here, what gets chopped at the top and bottom.
Yep.
Because it can only go so far.
Yep.
With those sharp edges, they make those sideband harmonics that our ears interpret as high end. So you've got all this artificial high end going on. When you turn down the guitar to where the waveform is now beneath that clipping point,
Yep.
well, now it seems more dull. So by going from a humbucker to a single coil pickup and back in the single coil pickup far away, where it doesn't have a lot of gain, it makes it easier to find a sweet spot of clean in there. And so that's why I play rhythm stuff all the time with high gain, but a little bit of. And I've got the gain there when I need it, but I go. In fact, if I was jamming with somebody and they were soloing, that's one of the things I would use to help give them room, is go to a smaller sound, which is easy to do with the single coil and turning it down. The single coil brings me back the high end that I've lost by turning down below the clipping point. I can give a lot more air for the other, and rather than go, all right, yeah, it's really cool, you solo, now it's if I play the rhythm at the same volume as I solo,
You got nowhere to go.
you got nowhere to go. But more importantly, if you're in a live setting, nobody's going to be following the solos that closely, especially if you're jamming.
Yeah.
And if you're in a garage, nobody's going to be helping you anyway. You got to do your own dynamics. So guitarists need ways to supply dynamics. And back in the Baroque days, they had terrace dynamics where they would have less instruments playing and figuring they're all going to play the same volume.
Right.
And the only way to, and same with pipe stops on an organ. So it's a sort of the same way, rather than turn down the guitar, which doesn't change much, on a distorted setting. Well, I'm cheating. I'm playing with the angle. It's easy to do, and just to turn down and get a useful sound. But
Wait, I want to ask you about having the slanted single coil in there. I mean, you have the pickup really far down.
yeah, and because of the magnetic thing, the influence, having too many magnets can get heavy. See, I've got another one too, the synth pickup.
Yeah.
The idea was just to get a little bit brighter. This is sort of a dead spot on the guitar to me. And on a lot of guitars, this is where they put the second pickup. I'm not in love with that spot, but I wanted the variety of having another pickup there. And I tried lots of different pickups here.
Yep.
I started with the DiMarzio Strat type.
But the angle, though, having it angled there, and having the high E string being further or closer to the bridge, it gives it more high end.
Yeah.
Do you think it balances the tone right there?
Yeah, more balance. It's sort of my hinder. That's what I use it for the most. And this one I use for the bringing down the the level.
Steve, I can listen to you play that funky jamming kind of stuff. I mean, you can play an hour's worth of that right now, and I would be happy.
Well, okay. You might start to see the repetition of it.
I can listen to that. I can listen to you play those kind of things all day. I love that about your playing, that funky.
A lot of different influences. Like I said, the time I spent with Tello's band, that was cool. Because we did a lot of bluesy or rhythm and blues kind of soul funk things. And one of my favorite lines was with Curtis on bass. With this whole machine, these guys just reading each other's minds, totally nailing it, and it was so cool being the token rock guy stuck in that. I just had a clean slate, but a lot of what I learned was playing rhythm. So Carlos and Curtis, and of course Tello, his patience was legendary. Like I said, he worked with Jocko.
Right.
And what a great experience in life to have. I'm super, super grateful for that.
And you just happened to be there right at the right time.
I tell people this all the time. That when people are saying, well, how do I make it? Or I need to get with somebody that make my songs big. It's like, you need to get with somebody that's like you, that doesn't have a name, and work when the stock prices are like the Microsoft in the basement or in the garage. That's when things happen. You have to sow a lot of those seeds, and try lots of different things and collaborations, and one of them gets traction, and suddenly, if you can supply the goods, of course, but one of those gets traction, then you're off and running. Guitar players are a dime a dozen in numbers, but a group is more likely to say, well, we got guys in line. If this guy quits, we all know somebody that can take his place. So you're probably not going to get those gigs. But what you can get is this works for all parts of life, not just music, is make yourself indispensable. You make yourself part of the package, and it has to be you, Usually writing is the key there. You write stuff that you believe in, that you feel, that you can play with conviction. Well, nobody can argue with that. And people respond to it. People want that. They want the real thing, I think.
Yes. Yes, I 100% agree. Steve, I want to ask you about this tune, Brave New World. Now, I'm just springing it on you right now here, but... Okay, first of all, let's just talk about the opening of this. What style is this again? What do you call that?
It's sort of a polychord thing, because that's all straight up. There's a B over. This is sort of an E over A.
Yep. And
this
you
is
go
sort
B
of a
over
B.
A with a sharp 4 there.
To the B over there then.
Yeah. All those kind of open, the wide intervals and everything, the open sound is, once again, it's that, I just hear it as that Midwestern kind of sound.
I like it. And hammer dulcimer too.
Yeah, like a Celtic vibe to it as well.
I'm always into that.
The thing I want to ask you about, though, is some of the distortion tones in here, because... Are you using different amps for those things, or those overdubs, and you just have a completely different sound, or did you have a rig set up?
Clean's was direct.
But your two distortion sounds, for example,
Yeah,
they're
this is
so
just
different
my basic. Try to give it a little shape with the tone control.
Yeah, that is so beautiful.
I like doing that and having the tone control make a difference.
Yeah.
Well, that's why we ended up with that. That's why I used that capacitor. The same was a little bit different than the one that was in the Telecaster.
You also do in later on in the song. It's interesting because then there's this prog element to it too. So those kind of tones with the pinch harmonics and stuff.
Yeah, it was tortured amp volume. It was the power tubes were really working there.
Would you just crank?
Yeah.
What were you playing through back then?
Either the Marshall 800 or the probably the Silver Jubilee.
Jubilee.
That
Okay.
that's got that sort of signature mid-range in there, which is what inspired this separate channel of a lot of mid-range controls.
Yeah. I love though all the combinations of all these different techniques too. The pinch harmonics. I mean, those would be pinch harmonics there, right? That you're doing.
Yes. That would,
yeah.
But where I go, that's artificial harmonics.
Up the octave.
So
there.
yeah, there's a combination of both. And sometimes I finish a phrase if I try to get that or something.
Steve, what makes you go for all these different tones? I mean, this is a really complicated setup, but you navigate through it very easily, it seems
Well,
like.
it's not that complicated. It looks like a mess because of the fact that I put it together. But it's not that complicated. There's gain and less gain. That's all this does.
Yeah, okay.
There's the reverb, slightly wet in the effects loop.
Yep.
Short delay, long delay. Oh, it's going through the wet amp only. Here's the long delay, wet amp only. That repeat is the wet amp. So it's dry, wet, dry, wet, wet. Okay, and then I got a short one, which gives me that chorus sound. So if I do something like it in Cruise Missile. It gives that shimmersing kind of sound because I've got a little bit of modulation in the short delay, a little bit of modulation in the long delay. Those are my presets that TC let me do, and I just download them into it. That covers the whole pedal board except for my tuner and the Keeley compressor. I've set it on a modest setting, which helps me get a better rhythm sound for a lot of things. And sometimes, like during Vista Grande, it helps. It's easy for me footwork-wise to leave it on during the distorted parts. And sometimes it helps the distorted parts, sometimes it doesn't. This is the guitar synth.
That's a hexaphonic pickup, right?
Yeah, this is a standard.
Now, does having the compressor on...
It's a separate circuit.
Yeah, it's a separate circuit. So that is just going to this, and then this goes to the amp, or where is that? Where is this going? Or is this going to a DI here, right? So this goes out to the house.
Yeah.
When you're playing live, how do you hear this?
Through monitors.
Okay.
If it's too weird, I can put a short chord into here,
Yep.
and now it's going through my wet amp.
Okay.
That's my if things go badly, and sometimes they do,
Yeah.
at a gig, you show up and you just get what you get.
Yeah.
So if things are going badly and it's not working out, I'll do that and bring it straight in on another input there. And it doesn't intermodulate with the guitar because it's through the wet amp, which sees less action. And so you don't have the amp trying to process a distorted tone plus the synth.
So you've been in a couple huge bands, Kansas, Deep Purple. What's it like to take over in these bands that have these long careers and have these really famous songs?
I think it helps if you're a fan. I think it's almost a requirement for you to be able to play the stuff with conviction and heart and soul. And the people that hate me for being born, that would go to the shows just because I'm not the original guy.
Yeah.
They want to see they got all the albums. They're waiting to get the album signed, and I'm not the original guy. Those people will begrudgingly say, "Okay, yeah, it was kind of neat." If they
He's
see
kinda
me,
good.
if they see me giving my heart and soul,
Yeah.
and loving the music and enjoying it, that I know it's not cool to a lot of people to be enjoying the music as much as I do on stage. But I think it comes across to most of them. It softens them up. Especially when I do a little bit of, this is a little bit of how Richie played the solo. And no, I'm not Richie, I can't do it like him, but I'm going to improvise my own thing. And I think that's the sweet spot, is showing that you care, you give the nod to them, and then you also can't help but be yourself.
Yeah.
So that's been the formula that I went with. And I think it's better to start your own band and get have your friends that know you your whole life, rather than join somebody else's band and take somebody's place. But if you get an opportunity to do that, definitely just remember how important it is to the audience. You've got to give them a real good reason to like you, because they're going to start off not liking the fact that you're a sub. Ask me how I know. Hey, it says, and I don't have normally good, dodging skills, but that's where I learned them.
When you're writing things, if you're writing for a new record, do you just have things sitting around that you've recorded at your studio? Are you writing all the time, or do you just write when you know you have something that you want to record?
I like to keep little seedlings in a special area, and ones that are near finished in another area, and ideas that I think are good but I've never developed in a third area. And I like I said, I visit them. I don't try to sit and work and write a song, even though I can do it, because what you end up doing is you get micro into it and think that everything is, because you work so hard on it, that this is going to be good. You've got to give yourself the space. Since you don't have a judge looking over your shoulder, or a producer, usually, and that you've got to be your own. So you got to give yourself some space, some distance. So don't work on the same things like day after day after day. Just alternate them with a few days in between. That way, when you go back and listen to what you've written, you say, "Oh, well, I like that part. That needs some work." And which you didn't hear that when you were working on it so intensely and so microscopically. So that's why, because you have to be your own judge in practicing writing and everything as a guitarist, I think that's why I can predict what kind of a musician someone will be based on their attitude in life. Like, if I say, sweep this room, if they're just going to do the absolute minimum, they're going to find out that no one's going to check and they just won't even do it. That's the worst case. The best case is somebody that takes it literally and sweeps the entire room, getting everything. Which one's going to be the better guitar player? I know the answer to that, because of all the hours you have to put in, and who's going to be the one that critiques themselves and says, this needs more work, this is not good enough, this isn't perfect, but this is not my best. And I'm especially at that point in life where perfection is a nice goal, but you got to get your best, however, whatever the level that is. You got to at least put out your best.
Anytime that your name comes up, it always comes up that you're a pilot. You've been a pilot for how long?
Since 1975.
Is that something you always wanted to do?
Oh, yeah.
How is being a pilot like being a musician?
You can fly a plane artistically, same way you can play artistically, or you can play mechanically, and you can fly mechanically by the numbers, you know. So making art smooth, looking for the smooth radius. When you drive your car, and you maybe you got some speed, you're doing the speed limit, of course, because you wouldn't be irresponsible, but you're looking for the best radius to make that turn smoothly. You find the spot to smoothly go to and hold that, and it comes out perfectly in the center lane. That's flying like that is an art. And it requires you to think ahead. It requires you to have mastery of the basics, mastery of the technique. But beyond that, to think, what's it going to take to make this the smoothest possible? I know how to do this, but I want to make it better than just doing it. So those are the similarities. And another thing that is similar is when you're a pilot, you're looking for things that could go wrong. And not all musicians think this way, but I sure do. As a result, you know, you bring spare strings, you bring a breakdown kit, you bring spare chords, you have an idea of what you're going to do if this doesn't work, if that doesn't work, if that, you know, to get you through the gig. You've always got that. But being able to look ahead and say, I need to be critical and think, what if? And that was the title of one of our albums, What If? Because that's one of the biggest questions that you have to ask yourself to cover all the bases in whatever you do in life. And that's why music is so good for everybody to learn, because, you know, it teaches you art and discipline and thinking ahead and all these things.
How important is it to improvise?
For these days, I don't think it's important at all, since everything is recorded. However, I think there's something you lose. There's a real expression and a bearing of your soul that happens when you just lay it out, and those people that are right in front of you in those seats that they paid too much for, they know it. They want to see the good, bad, and the ugly, but they want it to be real, and they want you to sweat for it and not just, you know, say, this, I got this, this always works. And there is some of that in my playing. I can't help it. I mean, the definition of style is a repetition of certain things. You can't get around style. So, but yeah, I'm going to give my heart and soul no matter what. And it's not always going to be brilliant, or probably not ever going to be brilliant.
But when it's great, it's unbelievably great, right? That's the idea.
It feels really good when you're able to nail a solo and be patient the right amount, and be energetic the right amount, and be somewhat flawless. That, you know, that's wonderful. And that's what you shoot for.
thank you so much for everything.
Thank you for, like I said, for let me have the opportunity, and especially for letting other people have the opportunity. You know, it does so much. You turn into the only person that people, I guess, trust. You know, to which your reaction to stuff is always positive. Otherwise, you wouldn't put it out. But it's the insight when you analyze stuff, that's important to people, and you gain credibility by doing that. And I think the key to me having a career is just by people giving me credibility. That by coming to the shows, and I'll spend time talking with them or whatever, over all these years, and they've been extremely loyal. A lot of them are dying now.
Well, we're going to try and stay alive as long as possible.
Yeah. I didn't mean as a curse on you. I'm just saying, just age-wise.
Yeah.
Age-wise, some of the people that were at our shows are no longer with us.
Yeah, well, that's, Dave and I were talking. He was 18 when I met him. He's 56 now? 55. And I was in my mid-20s there, late.
You're like 25.
25, yeah. I'm 61 now. It's crazy. It's like...
You kids today.
Yeah, right, exactly.
When I was your age...
I'm barely older than... barely
I had
younger
to
than
build
you.
my own studio.
You walked uphill both ways to school, right?
Actually, it was level, but...
I did want both.
That's a perfect YouTube short right there.
Yeah.
I'd like to once again thank Steve for being my guest today. And if you've stuck around this long, please take time and hit the subscribe button and leave a comment. Thanks so much for watching.